good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. How are you this morning? Welcome back to Family 360. This is your host, Dr. Desmond Maul. It's a blessing to have you today. It's a good thing. Thank God for this beautiful, bright, sunny day here in Conyers, Georgia. We're about 35 minutes outside of Atlanta, and it's a great place to be. And so today I want to welcome you and thank God for the privilege of being able to sit at this computer with this camera technology and reach all over the world with His Word. It's a privilege to be able to teach, to bring you the Word of God in a simplified manner that I pray will embolden you, encourage you to continue to walk this Christian life. Take it one day at a time. Do it daily, and do not let any barriers, any humbugs, any problems prevent you from walking and living the way that God wants you to live. You're not going to do it perfectly. We have been studying the life of David, and we see that he was not a perfect man, though he was so highly exalted and elevated. God gave him the title, the label, a man after my own heart. Yet David had a lot of problems, as we will see. So even though you may have some problems, some challenges, even though some of your prayers may not be answered, even though it seems as if doors are being shut and windows being closed, don't give up, my friend. Hang in there. Continue to trust the Lord to make a way, give you a break. I'm in the same boat some days, man. Yes, can I share something with you? Yesterday, I went home depressed, and I went to bed early. Me, man of faith, and called to do God's work, think I'm doing God's work, and blessed, and sometimes I feel so anointed after a therapy session, after people say, "Hey, doc, thank you for," hey, but yet I never know what the next day is going to bring. I'm some days, man, that day may whip me. The challenges of that day may whip me like crazy, but yet I am here. I still get up. I walked in this morning and I told my secretary that I did not sleep well last night, and I did not sleep well because some of the challenges I am facing, but I want to give God thanks because it's only through Him that I'm able to be here, and I keep pressing on despite the challenges that we face, that I face. I keep pressing on and won't give up. Okay, so hey, I heard that somebody won that lotto jackpot over here this morning. Man, I said, Lord, how come I didn't get it? Man, I would do so much for God with that. But hey, it wasn't His will. We are studying the life of David, and today we begin this is the second part of part B in studying the life of David. So last time I was with you, we got to the place where David's lust got him into problems with the wife of his neighbor, the wife of his soldier, one of his greater military fighters, campaigners, Uriah. So David used poor judgment, and he allowed his lust for Bathsheba. He was on the roof of his house, and there are all kind of stories, scenarios, hypotheses, assumptions regarding David and Bathsheba. And I'm going to go into some of them, but the word of God is very clear here. The responsibility. There are many who have blamed Bathsheba. There are many preachers and theologians who have blamed Bathsheba. None of them was there. I wasn't there. You weren't there. Let's go with the word and see what the word says. Though we can have some assumptions, let's be careful what we're teaching about this encounter. David was a man like you and I. He saw a beautiful, pretty woman taking a bath outside on the roof, and his lust got the best of him. The same way gets the best of us today in our contemporary world from time to time. Sex is a big business. It doesn't matter what age, what generation, what industry. You know, advertisers use sex to sell. Um, Everybody's using sex to bring in customers, to keep customers. Everywhere you turn, there's sex, sex. Whether somebody's selling a lipstick or a soda bottle, everybody's using sex. So we see here sex continue to be a big part in your life. And as I said, you know, a lot of giant men, a lot of great men succumb to the lust of the flesh. It doesn't mean they're no good. It doesn't mean they're useless when they fall, but it shows our frailty or our vulnerabilities. And sometimes, no matter how hard you pray, sometimes no matter how close you are to God, we still fall. David was very close. And you have many who would say, well, the prescription is get closer to God, pray more, and do this and do that. That's not necessarily going to work. Look at David. Who could be closer to God than David? Huh? And yet he fell. There are moments in our lives when we are vulnerable, and the enemy knows that, and the enemy comes against us during those vulnerable times. So we're going to look at David and see his vulnerabilities. We looked at him as a mighty man, as a mighty warrior, as a uniter of the nation of Israel, as the man after God's own heart. We look at him and we saw David as a man who had conquered numerous enemies, giving peace to the nation of Israel. And after much of that has been done, now we see David getting some rest. And it so happened that during this time of rest, when he should have been out fighting, you know, we can't always be fighting. and many of us preachers, again, we blame David. David should have been out fighting. When, listen to me, when does David rest? He had able, capable military leaders. He sent them out to fight. David was resting. The problem was not the rest that David was taking. The problem was that David gave into his lust. Wrong place at the wrong time. He saw something he wanted. He was the king, and he took it. He did not rape Bathsheba, but David gave into his lust. He was on his roof, and he saw her. Voyeurism, they call it. He saw her taking a bath, you know, and it landed him in significant trouble because Bathsheba got pregnant as a result of this rendezvous. And under the law of Israel, when you read Deuteronomy 22, verse 22, both the man and the woman should have been stoned to death. But he's the king. So who is going to implement this punishment? So this man, the ruler of Israel, all Israel, mighty in power, mighty in deed, mighty in military campaigns, great politician, you know, a great worshiper. We see where he begins to compromise his reign and his life by giving in to his lust. Every great man of God, we cross those roads, those intersections in our lives when we can compromise and damage our ministry and damage our work and damage our parenting and damage our marriages and our relationships with others. And you know, let's keep in mind that David did all of that. He used his privilege, his prerogative as king, to have sex with another man's wife. It's called adultery, by the way. He did that. It's very common today. It's always been common through history. It doesn't matter the class that the person is in, whether poor, middle class, rich, filthy rich, royalty, especially those who are filthy rich. They feel as if they can do anything. Sports, you know, where there's an attraction, quite often one or both sexes give in. So we see here that David used his privilege, his power, his position to send for and sleep with Bathsheba, resulting in her pregnancy. It is very popular, to suggest that Bathsheba seduced David. You hear preachers often beat up on women. Bathsheba was only doing that which was normal and customary. She was washing herself. During those days, they didn't have, I don't believe they had indoor bathrooms, indoor toilets, indoor running water. I grew up at a time in my life back in Jamaica, Hanover, Kendall, Hanover, Jamaica, West Indies. We're very proud of that, by the way. We had to use latrines, outdoor toilets, and you go in many third world countries, and even here in the United States, some parts of this country, in some states, in the poorer areas, there's people still use outdoor facilities, outdoor latrines, outdoor toilets, take their bath outside, So it was not unaccustomed for that behavior during those days. So David, instead of walking away when he saw Bathsheba taking a bath, he decided to watch. He was a voyeur, and this woman was a brick house. Who sang that song? Brick House? Yeah, Bathsheba was built like a brick house. I mean, she was beautiful. She didn't just have the body, but she was. Everybody said how beautiful. Even the Bible said how beautiful. Described this woman as beautiful, huh? And David loved beautiful things. All the women he quote unquote conquered or made his wives or concubines, they were beautiful women. Bathsheba did not seduce David. She's not to be blamed. David put himself in that situation. David did not have to give in to his lust. David could have walked away. Listen to me. David intentionally gave in to his lust. David could have walked away. David could have said, this wasn't good for me. David could have said, let me call one of my wives. Let me call, what's her name? Abigail. Let me send for, Ahinoam or one of the other wives, or even some of the concubines he had. He could have taken one of the female maids he had working with him. So don't blame Bathsheba. David had many options, many choices to walk away from this situation. And 2 Samuel chapter 11 tells us that David sent for her. It was an intentional act on the part of David. Bathsheba didn't just come over and knock on David's door. I don't know if Bathsheba realized that David was watching her. Huh? I don't think Bathsheba realized that that David was watching her. So why would you blame Bathsheba for this situation? The woman was going about her business. She was cleaning herself. She was washing herself after her monthly cycle. So those of you who keep blaming her, stop. Because David is the king. What is she going to do? Some of you have written about how, she could have resisted David. How is she going to resist him? He's the king. One word, she's dead. What's she supposed to do? You find some women in the same situation today. Circumstances put them in situations where it's difficult for them to say no. And even if they say no, some men still take sex from them, rape them, force them, and sometimes even kill them. Too many women are losing their lives because of the sexual lust, the predatory nature of men who will use sex as a means of demonstrating power, and control over women. This is what's going on with David here. This is power. This is control. This is greed, with David. This is the flesh and the spirit at war. And as Paul said, that the flesh and the spirit at war. Wasn't it Paul who said, "Oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me, from the misery?" It's always a war, you and I. Look, I don't care how anointed you are. I don't care how quote unquote Holy Ghost filled, fire baptized, wrapped up, tangled up in Jesus. You could know this Bible from cover to cover. Listen, we all have our weaknesses. You may not fall today, but you may fall tomorrow. You may not succumb to give into sexual sin, but you may give into something else, which is a sin. So when you're criticizing, please look at yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself. So Bathsheba did not seduce David, and we must understand that the responsibility for this situation lay clearly on David, not Bathsheba. The responsibility for this rendezvous is directly on David's shoulder. He was a peeping Tom who boldly watched the woman bathe herself. He could have walked away. He could have walked away. But David did not choose to do that. David, it reminds me of some of us men, and women. We see somebody with a beautiful body, we want it. It doesn't matter the circumstances, situation. Some of us will pay thousands of dollars to sleep with a beautiful woman. We will wine and dine, take her on excursions and trips just for sex, just to say, satisfy that lust, just to say, okay, I had so and so. Preachers, we have done it. We have done. Priests have done it. Presidents have done it. Husbands, secular and Christian, have done it. Boyfriends have done it. Women have done it. Wives have done it. So when you criticize, be mindful of your history, your past. So David was a peeping Tom, and he exercised no discretion in the matter, and just as boldly as he went out to war and fought and killed and had won victories. This is another conquest. Men are hunters. Men are always hunting. Men. A man could have, like David, a man could have the most beautiful wife in the world, and he goes out and commits adultery. He could have the most beautiful. Look at some of the movie stars. Beautiful, gorgeous woman. I looked at, who was it I saw? I saw a picture of, was it Carmelo Anthony's wife. Beautiful woman. Yet he went out and had a baby outside of the marriage on her. You look at this this guy, what's his name? He sang one of my favorite songs. Okay, it will come back later. Yet he went out, and his wife is an actress. He went out and had affairs on her. You look at some of the most quote unquote successful people, men and women. They cheat. They run around on and you and I would say, man, if I live with her, I wouldn't do that. Please, if I live with him, I would not cheat. You don't know what it is like living behind closed doors with such an individual. Stop saying it, because you probably would have done the same thing or worse. That person may look great. Look at Halle Berry. I mean, one of the most gorgeous black women or white women out there. Look at her. Yet how many times she's been married? 3 or 4 times. She's met Elizabeth Taylor. Lord, marriage, 8, 9, 10 times. Some of the most gorgeous people have problems, emotional, psychological, mental health, relational problems. Beauty is only skin deep. When you start to live with those individuals, it's not as easy. It's not a piece of cake. All right, because we all have our ways or our quirks, about us. And if we have a little success with us, Lord have mercy, you can't even live with yourself. So David exercised poor discretion. It was not within his right it was not within Bathsheba's right to refuse to respond to King David. Bathsheba could not say, when David sent his men to get her, she could not say, I won't come. The king called. In those days, the king calls for you. You're going to get up, drop everything that you're doing, and come. Bathsheba had no idea why David sent for her. None. The men who went and got her did not tell her why David wanted her. I don't believe she had any idea why King David had sent for her. Or maybe she thought her husband was dead and the king was going to break the sad news to her. because Uriah, her husband, was out fighting at the time. So it is something that we see here, and we got to ease upon Bathsheba because she was a subject of the king, and when the king calls, you better go. She had no right within her to refuse an audience with the king. She had to go when she was summoned. It was not within her right to refuse his sexual advances. What was she gonna do? Huh? I'm I was gonna say I'm sure, but listen, put yourself in Bathsheba's situation. The king sends for you. He escorts you into his bedroom. He makes sexual advance. What are you gonna do? You're gonna run out and go where? Where are you gonna run to? You're gonna scream. Who's gonna respond to you? Huh? Are you gonna say no to the king? Listen to me and stop lying if you said yes. Are you gonna say no to the king? This king wants you. Or you're the woman. You're gonna say no to this king? Maybe your husband, like Uriah, had been gone for months. Some of these guys, when they go out to fight wars, they're gone for years. Maybe Bathsheba had not been in the arms of her husband for months or years. And the opportunity is presented here. She may have resisted slightly, but she gave in. She succumbed to the advance of this handsome, the most successful, the most powerful, the most godly man at that time. She gave into his advances. Maybe it was something of pride for Bathsheba. Maybe it was an occasion to say, okay, I am wanted. I am desired. You don't know what went on in her marriage with Uriah, because in those days, women were treated as property. They didn't have much say. So it was not within her right to refuse David's sexual advances, despite what some suggest that somehow she knew what David was going to do, and she knew that David was watching her from the. There's a lot of speculation about what happened between David and Bathsheba. Let it be. Learn from it. Okay? Learn from it. All right. The next thing we see is that David, as I said, took her. It was also suggested that Bathsheba sought a liaison with David so she could have a child. Up until this point, Bathsheba was childless. Bathsheba was childless. In those days, what type of birth controls did they use? I don't know. But she wasn't able to get pregnant. So was something wrong? And some again have speculated she wanted to sleep with David so she could become pregnant. She wanted to sleep with a different man other than her husband so that she could become pregnant, because she was childless with her husband. It was one of those one night, one day, one evening, one morning affairs. In David's mind, it was supposed to be maybe a one-time event. He wanted to satisfy his lust. He wanted to satisfy his greed. At that moment, at that time, his wives were not uppermost in his mind. They could not satisfy him. David wanted somebody different, and it was going to be Bathsheba. So we look, whatever David's motivation was, David was a powerful man who got his way, regardless. Whether or not Bathsheba could have resisted him, David got his way, and he used his privilege, he used his power as the head of the nation of Israel at that time to have his way, and he took her. And later on, we will see the shenanigans that David had done, because Bathsheba was not the first married woman David took. She was not the first married David took. Some of us want things that are not possible. Some of us want things that are hard to get, that are difficult. Some of us want things that are not available to us. We know she's married. We know he's married. But you got to prove something, that you have that power and that charm and that persuasion to get her or to get him. You may not want to break up the marriage. That's not your intention. You just want to sleep with that man. You just want to sleep with that woman to prove a point to yourself that you can get wherever you want. And you go after him or you go after her. This is what's going on with David here. Bathsheba was not the first married woman that David went after. Remember Abigail? Abigail was also married, but her husband died. Michal, his wife, he took her from her second husband back after David had abandoned her for years. So David had a thing for going after that which was already taken, that which already belonged to another man. David was okay in indulging in one night stands and sending the woman back to her life at home to wait for her husband to come back home. David thought nobody would have known except for the soldiers he sent for his security detail he sent to get Bathsheba. Nobody would have known that this had occurred between David and Bathsheba if she had not gotten pregnant. David thought, okay, I will have her, send her back home. She will be home until her husband comes back from war, and life will go on as normal. David was not interested in developing a relationship with Bathsheba. Ladies, every man who wants you is not interested in having a relationship with you. All they want is the sex. Unlike David, most men will take the sex, but they don't want the consequences. They don't want the results of the sex. They will take the sex from you, all right, but don't tell them you're pregnant. There's some men who have killed their pregnant girlfriends. Men have done that. There was a football player many years ago. Was it in the 90s? Very good football player who killed his girlfriend because she got pregnant. And so often nowadays when we read stories and we see stories in the news, so many men kill their girlfriends because the man don't want a child. And especially if he's married, oh, it's going to ruin his reputation. It's going to ruin his marriage. Oh, the man took the sex, all right. We men will take the sex, but most of us don't want that child. We don't want that pregnancy. And we will kill that woman. We will kill that girlfriend just to save whatever we think we need to save. So we see here that David, being a powerful man, was not interested in a relationship with Bathsheba. All he wanted was to satisfy his sexual urgings at that time. He had no interest in getting to know her better and would not gain any sort of political edge from a relationship with her. None whatsoever. So why did he call for her? Why did he sleep with her? Sex. Pure sex. That's the bottom line. He was not in love with her, just sex. Some women get angry. Some women get frustrated because a man will sleep with a woman today. He gets up out that bed and in a couple of hours, he's sleeping with somebody else. He may sleep with his wife last night. He will get up this morning. He goes to the house of his girlfriend. And women, you ladies, some of you do the same thing. David wasn't interested in a relationship. Some of us, when we become caught up in an affair, it's not the relationship we wanted, it's just the sex. And for some of us, the sex is so good, it's better than what we have at home. Because when you are involved in an affair, man, you're gonna look good. I was watching a movie with Tyler Perry. One of my tenants was watching a movie, and I stood there watched that movie, and the young lady of Tyler, the wife of Tyler Perry, I forgot the name of the movie. was dressing up to go to work, and the snippet I saw was Tyler noticed she was wearing some of the sexiest outfits to work and underwear, and Tyler called her on it. And she started lying, and Tyler said, "Tell me the truth." I forgot the name of that movie. I'm going to watch it. I forgot. I'm going to borrow it because it's a movie that they bought or rented. I'm going to watch it. And Tyler called her, and eventually she in that same scene she broke down. She confessed. There are times when men and women are caught up in extramarital fears, extra relationship fears, because somebody makes us feel good. Somebody compliments us. Somebody say, "Man, you look good today. What kind of cologne you're wearing? What kind of perfume is there? You look good. I love your hair. Who did it?" And one conversation leads many times. An affair doesn't happen, boom, just like that. Okay, many times an affair develops because somebody gave somebody some compliments. They spend too much time talking about personal stuff. They spend too much one-on-one time alone, whether it's at work or some other setting after work. But that relationship, if you and I are not getting the emotional, relational support at home, watch out. It throws the door wide open for anybody to walk in. Be careful how you go about neglecting your spouse or your significant other. Make sure that you're the first one consistently to compliment them on how they look, on their accomplishment. You love that woman, you love that man. Be comfortable in your skin to say, "Hon, you look good today. What can I do for you today? How can I help you? What do you want me to do by the time you get home? It will be done. You want me to run the bath for you? You want me to rub your feet?" Sometimes you just need to go out and surprise her. There's some women who love surprises. Get her, go to Victoria's Secret. Gentlemen, some of us don't like to go to Victoria's Secret. Go to Victoria's Secret and some of those lingerie places that you may not have a Victoria's Secret, and just surprise your wife or your girlfriend. Get them let them know you were thinking about them. On your way home, let them know you're thinking about them. Compliment them. Give them a text. Text them a couple times throughout the day. Let them know you miss them, that your mind has been. Do you know how excited that man or that woman would be to get home because they know you're thinking about them? When's the last time you take your significant other out on a date? Who was it? I had a couple in here the other day, and I asked them when's the last time they went out, and the wife paused. She paused. She was thinking. So I was print. The last time I was print 2 years. 2 years since that man invited his wife out on a social outing, on a date, one-on-one. And many of us men, when we go out, we take the whole family, we take the kids, we take the dog, we take the cat, we take grandma, we take the in-laws. When you go out, spend quality time with your significant, with one-on-one, no other distraction, and learn to talk, learn to communicate about whatever. Get into your spouse, get into your significant other. Let them know you are there for them. I'm doing some marriage counseling here, don't I? Because this is what happened to David. David got caught up in meeting a sexual need. The other thing I would want to say to those of you who are married or in relationships, set aside time for sex. Oh, why should we pencil that on our calendar? You know why? Because for some of us, if we don't do it, it never happens. We are too busy. By the time we get home, we are tired. We are out. We got to cook, clean the house, take care of the kids, return this and return. We got so much going on that by the time you hit the bed, by the time your head hits the pillow, you're out cold. Your spouse is trying to be romantic, trying to have sex with you, and you're asleep. You tell him, "Oh, tomorrow." Both of you are so darn there is a book out here. Go and read it. It's called The Sexless Marriage. Oh my good. So many couples Couples, it doesn't matter the color or how much money they make or the education. They're so exhausted. They're so busy. They have no time for romance. Set aside time for romance. Set aside time to date yours once a week. Just if it's half a day, let your spouse know this is for you and me. If you can't do it every month, maybe every 3 months, 4 times a year, you say let's get away to a hotel for the weekend. That's it. Get some babysitters. You got kids, get some reliable babysitters. Ask grandma or grandpa, ask somebody to watch these kids while you and your spouse get away for some time. Bathsheba was in a situation in which she didn't have much choices. She was convenient for David. She was convenient for David. That's how some relationships get started. That girl was convenient. That woman was convenient. That man was convenient. The right timing. Bathsheba was convenient for David. And once he had his way with her, she was to go back to her life and keep her mouth shut. She was supposed to go back to her life with her husband when he came home, sleep with him, and keep her mouth shut. And I believe that would have happened if she had not become pregnant. Okay? And even up to the point of his death, Uriah never knew what hit him. Uriah never knew that his wife had slept with King David. How would he have reacted if he had known? One of the things I like about Bathsheba, she kept this to herself. And there are some things that you have done. You need to take it to the grave with you, because you may put your life at risk, your marriage at risk if you share it. I've seen too many tragedies when, because of your conscience, because of your guilt, you come and confess something that happened years ago, maybe months ago, and you end up in a bad situation. Some things you go and confess them to God. If you got to go to a priest, I won't even encourage to talk to a pastor, because some pastors talk too much. Just confess it to God and let it be. God will forgive you. In reality, David offered no apology to Bathsheba that we know of. He demonstrated no remorse for his sin, for his act of trespassing, for his violation of her. None whatsoever. There is no question that David was the father of her child. David did not even say, once the news got to him from Bathsheba, Bathsheba said to David, well, I'm pregnant. You took the sex. The result, now we have a child. David did not deny that. Oh, I wish we men would stand up regardless of the risk and accept the consequence of us having sex with a woman. If it's your child, be a man. Support that child. Go do a DNA test if you have to. But once the proof comes back that is your child, support you. Don't let that woman have to be chasing you, running you down, begging you for money. Some of us have the audacity to ask her not to put your name on the birth certificate. Listen, if you are married and you're out there running around, there is a chance that you don't get somebody pregnant. If that child is yours, that woman should put your name on the birth certificate regardless of the consequences. Go tell your wife. Let her deal with it. Maybe that's something that could help to turn your marriage around or help you to stop running around. But too many of you ladies have allowed men to get away and not support their children. Too many kids are growing up fatherless, don't know who their father is, gets no child support from their father. If there is sickness, some type of disease, the doctors can't treat the child because we don't know the generational issues and concerns, because you won't give up the name of the father. There is no record of the father on the child's birth certificate. Stop being so selfish and look out for your child. David offered no apology. And there is no question that David is the father of this child. For example, in 2 Samuel 11:4, it says here, now she was purifying herself after her period. Right after her period, the woman is very, very fertile right now. Very, very fertile. Women can tell you what time of the month they are most fertile. She had just ended her menstrual cycle. She was maybe if David had breathed on her, she would have gotten pregnant. So in an effort to save his life and hers, David plotted a cover-up that failed. To save, what would Bathsheba, well, not Bathsheba, her husband had done if he had known? How would Uriah had react? This is one of David's most capable, able fighters and warriors. How would she had reacted knowing, how would he had reacted knowing that his boss, his king, had violated his home, had taken his, how did Nathan put it, his one little sheep, violated that one little sheep and got her pregnant. So this is panic time for David, because David knew he had trouble on his hands. Uriah had been fighting. We don't know how long this war had been going on, how long Uriah had gone from home. So it would have been very difficult for Bathsheba to put this child on Uriah. In Jamaica, we call it a jacket. It would have been very difficult for Bathsheba to give Uriah this jacket. And David tried his darndest to put this jacket on Uriah, but Uriah refused to go home. He got drunk. He did not go home. David sent for him, called for him, hoping he would go home and sleep with his wife so he could get this jacket. Uriah didn't do none of that. Serving his king was more paramount to him than going home to sleep with his wife. That's what he said. Some of us men are walking around with jackets that don't belong to us. And some of us know, and we still take care of that child. Some of you ladies have given some men some jackets. And you know it. And some of you may not even know who that child belongs to. So we have a jacket situation here that David is trying to cover up. So he brings Uriah home. He orders Joab, his peace in the pod buddy, his commander, to send Uriah home. Uriah came home. David hoped that Uriah would have sex with his wife and thus claim the child as his own, because in those days they didn't have any DNA tests. As long as the child looked white and looked something like the father, it was his. David's schemes, David's plans, not working out. David went to great lengths to set up Uriah, but Uriah unwittingly did not play along with the plot. Several times. So David felt he had no choice but to make sure that Uriah died in battle. The alternative was too great for David. The alternative of Uriah finding out that Bathsheba was pregnant, and of course Bathsheba would have told Uriah, Bathsheba would have been stoned, and because of the law, maybe David would have been stoned. David wanted to avoid all the nastiness, the ugliness of all of this you know, reality situation. So David settled on the ultimate act. David felt he had no choice but to make sure that Uriah was killed in battle, and he brought in his compatriot in mischief and in good, Joab, his commander. And he basically told Joab of the plot. He sent a letter to Joab with Uriah. Uriah carried his own death warrant. That's how trusting Uriah was. He carried his own death sentence from David to Uriah. He was set up by did Bathsheba know? I don't think Bathsheba knew of any of this. I think all of this, this plotting, David kept from Bathsheba. So David sent a letter to Joab with Uriah, who unknowingly carried his own death warrant. And Joab, this faithful, loyal commander to David, did not ask any questions about David's interest in Uriah or why he wanted Uriah dead. Joab did not ask. Now, if it was you and me, maybe would have asked. Send back a letter. Why? What's going on here? He's one of my best fighters, my best commanders. He's a valiant warrior. Why you want him dead? Joab didn't ask any questions. There are those of us who go through life and we do whatever without asking questions. Maybe because we don't want to implicate ourselves. Joab followed orders. And when news of Uriah's death reached David, he sent a message to Joab that further tied them together in this intrigue. Second Samuel 11 verse 25, it says, Then David said unto the messenger, Thus shalt thou say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. David implicated Joab said, David said to Joab, don't get upset that Uriah is dead. Trust me, Joab, don't get upset about it. Joab became collateral damage. David set up Uriah to be killed and implicated Joab in his war of crime, or crime war, or this crime during a time of war. In addition to Uriah, other innocent soldiers were killed to cover up David's deed. So it wasn't just Uriah that was dead. From the beginning, David implicated his security people who went and got Bathsheba. He implicated Bathsheba in this situation. Joab had to move the army closer to the wall, and they were ordered to fall back from Uriah. Other soldiers, I'm sure, probably got killed, paid the price. Collateral damage. David overstepped his bounds. He did some evil things. Evil. But according to David, this was okay. The Bible says when Bathsheba learned her husband was dead, she mourned. Women during those times expected their husbands to be killed in battle. And Bathsheba, from the scriptures, didn't mourn a long time. Because the Bible said shortly after that, and by the way, with Uriah being killed, there goes Bathsheba's security. Her economic life was now done. She had no pension to look forward to. She had no children, no sons to provide security and an economic livelihood for her. She was very, very vulnerable at this time. And not just her, but all women during those days, very, very vulnerable when their men were killed in war. So shortly after this, David married her and she gave birth to a son. Upon her husband's death, David sent, got Bathsheba, brought her to him, married her. They had sex again. Their relationship now began to develop. And the Bible says David married her and she gave birth to that son that was conceived as a result of that one night, one day, one moment stand. Uriah is now out the way. It seemed as if David had gotten away with murder and adultery. But God was watching. God was aware of David's plots. God was aware of David's lustful spirit. God was quite aware of David's infidelity with Bathsheba. God was quite aware of the murder of Uriah. The consequences of his actions, David tried to hide. And the funny thing is that David was so close to God, I'm sure he knew he was committing a sin or sins. I'm sure David knew that God knew he had committed sins. Maybe David was expecting God not to respond, God not to react. As a matter of fact, later on, we will see upon his response when Nathan confronted him that David wanted to hurt that guy that Uriah was talking, not Uriah, Nathan was talking to him about. David felt he had gotten away with his sins. Ladies and gentlemen, you see how one moment of weakness branches out into so many consequences, so many sins in our lives. So when you and I get out there to try and get away with things we should not get away with, it doesn't matter how clever you think you are, God knows. And some of us have paid a high price. We have paid a high cost for our infidelities, for our betrayal, for our lack of faithfulness in our relationships. Like David, some of us have ended up with kids. Some of us have ended up with busted relationship distrust. Our spouses don't trust us anymore. And you want them to get over it just like that. They're not Bathsheba. When you cheat on your spouse, don't expect them to get away with it just like that. It may take years before they forgive you. And some men feel as if, well, it's done. It's over with. Forgive me. You say you forgive me. Oh, yeah? Most women don't forgive a cheating spouse. They will walk out on you. They will end the relationship. And if they stay with you, payback is what? Is a B, they say? They may, payback is a bitch, as they say. Hey, they may go out and cheat on you just to hurt you in the same way that you hurt them. They may not sleep with you. They may not want you to touch them for months. They may be crying uncontrollable. They may turn to drugs or alcohol because of your infidelity, you cheating on them. The consequences are major. And it's something for you to think about. Are you willing to pay the price? David didn't think through the consequences of his actions. David was quick to take the sex. I preached a sermon years ago at a church back in Philadelphia, and man, the audience said Genesis 38 of Joshua and Tamar, of Joshua taking the sex and not expecting the consequences of twins, taking sex from his daughter-in-law. He didn't know it was his daughter-in-law, but the end result is he had twins. He didn't expect it. And quite often we see this goes through the Bible, where men take the sex. We don't want the consequence. We don't think through the consequence. And it ends up creating problems. Today, many marriages have ended because either the woman or the man stepped out of the relationship, had sex with somebody, there's a pregnancy. Nowadays we have abortions. Nowadays we have the morning after pills. God knows what goes on in so many of our relationships. But there are consequences. 2 Samuel 11:27 says, but the thing that David had done displeased God. It displeased Yahweh. The God who said, David is a man after my own heart. He is now displeased with the very man he had chosen. But the thing that David had done displeased Yahweh, and Yahweh sent Nathan to David. Here comes a confrontation, and David is not going to like it. David, just imagine what's going on with the other wives that David had. Don't you think they knew what was going on? Of course they did. Just imagine they're on the sidelines. Just imagine their anger, their frustration. By that time, David had adult kids. What was going on with these kids when they knew of David's infidelity with Bathsheba? What happens to Abigail and Ahinoam and some of these other wives emotionally? How did they cope? Did they just give into it? Did they just accept it as, oh, it's the king doing his thing? What happened in this family? And later on, we will see some of the radical consequences, changes that came about in David's life because of this one sin and other sins. But there are consequences for our betrayal, for our distrust, for our proclivity to give into our impulses, our impulsivity. David was a very impulsive man, and it cost him. Many of us also are very impulsive. We see something we want. You think you're entitled. You think you have the right to that woman. You think you have the right to that man. You think you have the right to demand, sex, and you do everything, and you are married, but you flaunt it in the face of your spouse. Sometimes I say to us, man, we are daring, we are bold, we are reckless, because you see some men and women openly, boldly having affairs and their spouses and they go home, they sleep in the same bed, not afraid that woman could kill him. Every now and then we hear about a girlfriend, our wife, cutting off the man's penis. Oh yeah, she got tired of all the infidelity, and she took matters into her own hands. How do you run around on your woman? She cooks your meals and sleeps in the same bed, and you go to bed so peacefully. Oh, sometimes some men have had some severe consequences. Boiling water being thrown on them, acid being thrown in their faces, losing their penis, being poisoned. Be careful. Don't flaunt it. Be careful. This is Dr. Maul. God bless you. Hey, join me again next time. We'll pick up from there. Exciting, isn't it? You be safe. Bye-bye.